Now we're going to talk about horizontal translations, and that's when we're moving the graph left or right. Now, I'll warn you, these seem a little bit backwards than what you might expect, so be very careful here. So here, when we have a positive number, and here we're going to look at inside the parentheses, inside our function. If we have f of x minus d, that means we've taken x minus a number and plugged it in where we just had x before. That shifts it right by that many units, okay? So subtracting, we go right. And I know right is in the positive direction, so that might seem counterintuitive. But here, if you're subtracting inside the parentheses, you're moving right. And then if you're adding inside the parentheses, so if you inside the parentheses put x plus a number, you're moving left that many units. Okay, so let's use our graphing calculator to explore this. First, we're going to look at the absolute value of x. So that's our parent function. So we'll call that the parent function, or what we're comparing this to. Okay, and we'll do that in blue. Now, to get absolute value, you're going to hit the math button. You're going to use the right arrow key once to go to number, and this ABS stands for absolute value. Oops, I don't really want it there in Y3. Let's put it in Y1, so math, number, absolute value, and we're just going to put x. Okay, and we're going to hit graph, and that's the absolute value of x. So that's this one right here. Okay, now let's check out what happens. Let me change my pen color. Let's go green. When we want to do the absolute value, and inside there, that's what I mean by inside. Inside where the x was, we have absolute value of x minus 3. Well, according to our rule, since we're subtracting, this is going to shift it right. Okay, so let's put this in our y equals, so y2, remember math, number, absolute value, and we're going to do x minus 3. And we're going to go over, remember we can change this to more bold, okay, and we see that that does shifted it from here over to the right. Okay, we went right by 3, and we got this graph right here. Now this is different than the vertical translations we talked about. If we had done absolute value of x, and then at the end, after the absolute value, subtracted 3, that would have moved it down, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about being inside the absolute value. Okay, now if inside the absolute value we add 4, our rule tells us that that would be shifting it left by 4. Okay, so we'll do that in red, and let's go ahead and put this as math number, absolute value of x plus 4. So if the plus 4 had been outside of the absolute value, that would be moving it up by 4. But since it's inside the absolute value, it's going to move it left by 4. Let's do the same thing we did. Let's make this dotted. Okay, graph. So it doesn't show dotted too well here, but as you can see, it shifted it left by 4. Okay. So one thing I always tell students is to tell the difference whether you're doing a vertical translation or a horizontal translation. If it's outside where your x is, if it's squared or in an absolute value or anything, then it's a vertical translation. If it's inside where your x is, like here these were inside the absolute values, then it's a horizontal translation.